So this tutorial series assumes that you're starting from scratch with a new product or system. If you're not, and you're mid-development, say, on some large project, feel free to start where you are and begin modeling up and downstream, though some of the later products and methods may require you to backtrack a bit and create things, but don't be afraid and just do what's necessary to execute the model that you need to succeed. I also do assume that you have some level of source content, a capabilities development document, a mission statement, something that's telling you what the system has to do. If you're on your own, feel free to start right at the capability and behavioral analysis and begin sketching out what your system's doing, but just make sure you document your assumptions with rationale or other relevant content. Make sure you favor empiricism and pragmatism. Try not to overthink what you're doing. Learn this by doing it. It's been painfully obvious to me over the years that some errors in your approach may not be immediately detectable. There's choices I made early in my modeling career that led to not the best outcome, months later, and we had to rework a bit of the model and fix it. I mean, there's no way the first time you're doing this to anticipate the future with 100% certainty and clarity. So just be constantly self-critical. Don't be afraid to constantly question what you're doing and make sure that the model elements you're creating and the relationships you're building are appropriate. Now, I am trying to share with you the best I've been able to come up with and why, so hopefully you won't have too many of these issues, but again, be self-critical constantly as you adapt this to your needs. But favor pragmatism over theory. Nobody's grading you against some theoretical report card. Your mission is to succeed with the system and project that you're working on. Though I would challenge to you that after you have several successes under your belt, you can start extracting patterns and modeling guidelines and then share them and institutionalize them. But don't do that too soon. You want to learn what's best for you and what really works by actually doing it and modeling it, not having thought experiments in a vacuum. Now, there are some aspects of hypermodeling that may be difficult for some stakeholders to accept. For starters, we don't allocate. I dislike the allocation relationship intensely. I feel it's intellectually sloppy and a waste of time. So I require satisfaction relationships with requirements because they tend to force you to be very specific. It also helps you catch mistakes. If I allocate 1,000 requirements to you, you can't find the fact that the 3 mass requirements are in conflict. Whereas if I have 3 mass requirements that are all satisfied by your mass, it's crystal clear that there's an issue. It's much easier to find. So satisfaction is a significantly stronger relationship between requirements and model elements. So I require those. We also don't allocate functions. They're owned by a block. So we use operations to capture functions. They're owned by a model element, and that makes it very clear who does them. So again, that gets rid of a relationship and leverages the structure of SysML to our benefit. There's also no swim lanes on activity diagrams. Again, they're typically used to allocate. The way we model, the ownership is readily apparent just by studying the diagram with a little bit of care. And so because we don't need swim lanes, we don't use them. We also defer requirements authoring as much as possible to the end. SysML is going to allow us to make model elements into requirements, say a state machine or some other well-formed model construct. So again, you don't want to waste time on churning text-based requirements. And I would really encourage you to master the requirements in the model. This gets rid of the need for separate requirements tools as well as the interface and need to synchronize. This could be a really difficult sell, particularly if some of the larger requirements tools are institutionalized in your company. Frankly, I think they're a waste of money in this day and age. They probably served a purpose when they came out, but today there's better ways to handle requirements. We want to minimize them anyway, and if we're going to have to create as few as possible, let's just master them right in the architecture tool and dispense with the separate requirements tool. And for more thinking on this, go see the Requirements Churn, the Hidden Drain on Systems Engineering video at my YouTube channel. I think it'll give you some additional thinking in that regard. Now, it wouldn't be a modeling tutorial without me quoting Admiral Rickover at least once. I've referred to him in some of the other videos. One thing that I really agree with him is that he felt that good ideas are not adopted automatically. They must be driven into practice with courageous impatience. So if you're watching these video series, you obviously are on a system modeling trajectory, and you're going to run into opposition. So don't be afraid to have some courageous impatience and push just a little bit to try to make this happen. It's not going to happen if people sit around and get mired down in endlessly seeking consensus and a lot of feel-good activity. I'm not saying you have to be argumentative or confrontational, but you should have a healthy level of impatience to drive this forward. And another quote, everything new endangers something old. I mean, my rabid stance against requirements tools definitely threatens companies that make requirements tools. And so definitely, as you embark on hypermodeling, you're going to run into people whose either livelihood or their approach or just some other sacred cow is going to be threatened by what you're doing. Don't be afraid to do what you think is right. And I'll leave it at that. I mean, again, we're not looking for trouble, but don't be bashful about advancing the profession by doing the right things to help manage the complexity of modern systems. They've outgrown the ability of old ways of doing things to keep up. And most of all, don't be afraid. Again, transformation is not easy, especially when you're slaughtering sacred cows. Again, you want to be diplomatic. We're not here to make enemies or cause trouble needlessly, but don't be afraid to be a bulldozer if you have to be. And just bury your opponents under a pile of wow. Show them that doing things this way adds value. Lets us tell the story of the system more effectively. Lets us do analyses we never could do before. Don't be afraid to show what's possible by just moving out and doing it. And when all else fails, just tell yourself, don't worry, they'll catch up. You know, that's an adapted quote from Jeffrey Hazlitt's Think Big, Act Bigger. Again, worth your time to read when you have some opportunity to do so. So as you start your hypermodeling effort, go ahead and find the source content that you want to represent in the model. This could be your mission statement or charter, capabilities documents, user stories, design guidelines, standards, whatever is appropriate that is going to be the baseline for some of the modeling effort. So begin collecting that so at least you have it handy and available to you as you begin your model.